Hello, welcome to Portage County Matters. I'm Patty Dreier, Portage County Executive. It's great to have you with us here today. My guest today is the Honorable Judge John Finn, who just retired a couple of days before the taping of this show ago after 27 plus years at the bench. And it's going to be a pretty exciting time to hear his reflections and have, well, maybe I should just say the first opportunity to see what it's like on the other side of that lovely retirement hill, if you would, which is a great hill. But before we get there, I've just got two quick announcements, two things that I just wanted to let you know about. One of them you've probably read about in the news, and that is related to a recent veto related to action I took on the county board changes made to the reporting change of the water resource specialist position in the county. This is the position that helps us do the right thing for groundwater planning in Portage County. But basically, I just wanted to read briefly this press release that I put out, just to make sure that you've got the story straight from me. I know there are a lot of different things circulating in the newspapers. Basically, I vetoed the action taken by the Portage County Board of Supervisors at their July 21st meeting, which would designate a different reporting chain of command, if you would, in our organization of county government for the water resource specialist position in the planning and zoning department. The reasons: there's been a lack of, in my opinion, there's been a lack of transparent and respectful planning and coordination on this matter, as evidenced by the June 23rd Planning and Zoning Committee meeting and the July 7th Land Conservation Committee meeting. 11 county board supervisors vetoed initially to send this action back for further discussion and clarification. While that initial motion was voted down 13 to 11, the discussion that followed on the floor of the county board that night also indicated that this idea had not been fully vetted nor coordinated. We need to ensure there is a clear line of supervision and responsibility for all staff to have a chance to succeed. And so there also needs to be a clear understanding of relationships with oversight committees, and all of these things are not clear in this particular action at this time. So that is the reason why I chose to veto this action. What it means is that the action will come back to the county board in the future meeting, likely the August county board meeting, and it will take a 2/3 vote of the county board to override this veto. Basically, what I'm hoping for between now and then is that we stand back, we take a deep breath, and we focus on ensuring that we have our organizational structures and systems and staff in proper alignment, and that there is not only alignment in the county government structure, but also with citizen expectations and oversight committees. Again, trying to give the best opportunity possible for our groundwater specialist, our water resource specialist, to succeed in her job. So that is one action. And then the other thing I wanted to do is just to pass along some kudos, and then we'll get to my guest in the show today. Jane Mahoney is the Older Americans Act consultant out of the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources. And this organization is out in communities taking a look at how our programs are doing in supporting the older Americans in our communities. And we got a July 30th correspondence from Jane Mahoney, and she said this to Cindy Petruski at our Aging and Disability Resource Center. Cindy's the director of that unit. I just wanted to let you know that I stopped to visit with Tonya Simmons, and Tonya was was a guest on this particular show. She's a gift too, but she was a guest on this show not long ago when we were talking about caregiver support services in Portage County. So Jane stopped by to visit with Tonya last week to find out how things are going in the caregiving world in Portage County. That Jane writes, I knew she was doing some employer outreach through the coalition that was interested in hearing more about that. I was so impressed with all of the caregiving resources available and all the work that Tonya and Barb Evans, her colleague, are doing to help to get the word out in Portage County. It's so nice to see quality programs, and I hope that someday other counties will be replicating the work that's happening in Portage County. So another feather in Portage County's cap, we are on the leading edge of serving our elders and older Americans, and also our disabled populations, and caregiving is an important piece of that. So it's just a nice follow-up, I felt, to one of the other recent shows that we have done here on Portage County Matters. So now to my honorable guest, Judge John Finn. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So retirement was Friday the 31st of July.
Correct.
And here we are taping on the 3rd of August. And I know everybody's question is, so how's retirement?
I don't know yet.
I knew you were going to say that,
Yeah,
but it's just great to... I'm tickled that you were able to join me here today. That's probably not the first thing you would have thought of doing on your first Monday.
It's fine.
All right.
Well, as I mentioned, all I was doing, I was at home paying bills, so I just like a break, coming over here to do this.
Well, I'm just so excited to have you here. I know that I first heard about you when I was out at the Central Wisconsin Environmental Station, a field station of the College of Natural Resources at UW-Stevens Point, and I was first in a program director role and then promoted up the chain and became the director there. And you were one of the trustees of Camp Chicagami, which is the Boy Scout camp equals Central Wisconsin Environmental Station. So it was just a great way to hear your name for the first time, and then to follow this really awesome outreach that you've done in our community for all of your years here, to just follow it through the years and then get to know you better in this role. It's just a great honor.
Glad to get to know you better. And yeah, we try to. I've tried over the years to talk about the law, talk about the court system. I've talked in front of groups whenever they'll have me. I teach a class every other semester at UWSP in the evening on law. We have groups come into the courthouse all the time. I've done radio programs over the years, going back to way back in the late 80s, early 90s, when we would do a weekly show on WSPT at that time. And that's always been fun. I always enjoy that.
Your outreach, though, has been extraordinary. I mean, when I think about working with you as county executive, but then also when I was in the county government beforehand as a member of the finance department as county grant writer, I got the opportunity to meet with you, but also then to become more aware of all the different ways that you are out with communications across the community. And I think you've just done an amazing job on so many different fronts to help people understand that, well, judges, number one, don't have to be scary people. Like some might have otherwise thought, and that you can be accessible, and that you can teach, and that you can help us all build a better system for the good of the whole.
We've always tried to remain accessible. There are some limits to that because as a judge you cannot have a conversation with someone regarding a pending case. Particularly, you cannot have a conversation with a participant in that case. If you do, that's a breach of ethics, and if the person doing that is a lawyer, that person could get disciplined, and certainly the judge could get disciplined for doing that. So a lot of times the public doesn't understand that. Even up until the last week I was in office, I would get maybe once every 2 weeks, a letter from somebody regarding a case, and we'd have to put it in the file unread because it's what we call an ex parte communication.
Oh,
you can't do that. It's just not fair. So
fascinating. Well, 27 plus years.
27.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for your service. I know that my thank you doesn't come with anywhere near the impact it should for all of your 27 years. But on behalf of the citizens of Portage County and what you've done through the Portage County Circuit Court system, thank you.
Well, it's not me alone. It's there's a lot of people working to make that system work. In fact, that's one of what I think is one of the best accomplishments is that I share with retired Judge Fleischauer and now Judge Pflugar and now Judge Egan. We've tried to keep the bar high.
Indeed.
And that goes with maintaining the dignity of the court system, not having casual Fridays for dress. We dealt with that issue early on when some employees wanted to come in on Friday dressed casually, and I said, if I'm going to court on Friday, I expect the same treatment as if I'm going on Tuesday.
There you go.
And so we've just always always made sure that, that we give respect so that we get the respect back.
Interesting. So take a look at your 27 years. What would you say is one of your proudest accomplishments? And I realize it's not just you alone. I get that. It's part of our whole justice system. But we've had some great leadership here out of Portage County, and I know you've been part of that heritage.
Well, we have. And I think that working along with other people to get things done, I think one of the two most dramatic changes that we've had that I'm very proud of is the creation of the Day Report Center and the creation of the Intensive Supervision Program. And they came out of crisis. You remember Kathy King, she was the criminal justice coordinator for years. We came out of a meeting one day and the legislature had just changed the law again on operating under the influence, adding additional penalties. And when we got out of the meeting, I said to Kathy King, I said, this is insanity. We can't keep doing this because the people are committing the same crimes over and over again, regardless of what's happening with the changes in the law. So we sat down to try and figure out what to do. And she and I devised a system whereby we would start upon the first appearance in court and require the person to go through a program which would include alcohol and drug abuse treatment. And it was unheard of because you usually have to wait till there's a conviction, and that was the problem. That could be 7, 8, 9 months down the line, so now the person picks up another OWI. So we started the program basically by forming a committee, which you have to do. We got the Justice Coalition involved, but we got citizen members, including the local head of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and just sat around a table and powwowed this thing to figure out how we can do it, how we can make it work. And within a few months, we had the pieces together, and then we were able to get the blessing of the county board because there was a DOT grant that actually funded the original part of it. But basically, the concept is treatment right away, and if they comply, a break on the sentencing, and including home detention instead of part of the sentence being on home detention. That was acceptable, and it resulted, some years back, they had a summer intern in Kathy King's office, and she did a survey on how many repeats there were, repeat drunk driver, and it's only, the only people they handle is OWI third plus. But the recidivism was down like about to 17%, which is phenomenal.
Right.
So very successful program. Then we followed up with the post-trial supervision program. So that, I think, is a great accomplishment. The Day Report Center, we were keeping people in jail before sentencing because we weren't sure that we could have them out on bond because they had drug abuse problems. Basically, what we created is a way to check into the jail every day or every third day or whatever without having to stay there, but just checking in to make sure, are you taking your medications? Yep. Are you consuming any drugs? No. Let's take a test. And if they fail, then they'll have to sit in jail. So that has been a tremendous help to the pressure on the county jail.
Do you remember about the year time frame when you
I want to say 2003, 2004, that neighborhood, but time flies, you know, so I don't really exactly recall. So that, again, you did all of that in partnership with justice programs here in the county and in partnership with other members of the Justice Coalition and the community. And these are still really strong structures that we have today as far as how we have we continue to take issues to the Justice Coalition. It's just been a phenomenal we were concerned. We were very concerned that the public may not accept this. But when you have the public involved in the decision making, it was never a question. Everybody thought it was a good idea. So
reflect on your years. I would say, I'm going to guess that from the bench you've seen changes in the community through the cases brought up to you as judge. So what would you tell everybody
about that? Well, as I've
often
often said, when I started out, the two worst crimes you could commit in Portage County were operating after revocation and pointing a gun at a deer out of season. And if you did those two things, you were really bad. Today, those are almost non-existent. we've seen just an increase. Well, first of all, the legislature has passed so many laws criminalizing conduct, but we've just seen an increase in more serious crimes than we had in the past. We've seen just a change in society, which now requires us to have security in the courtrooms. When I started, you could walk into any courtroom, any judge's office, and there were no locks on the door. Well, there were locks, but only for after hours. There were no partitions. Oftentimes, people in my office they'd have to leave the office for a moment and go somewhere else. And it wasn't unusual that some member of the public would just walk in, walk past, and walk right into my office, which was not a problem, but it is a problem today. I don't know if you know the numbers, but they're close to 40,000 people a year that are screened on the second floor of the courthouse by our security team. I found that amazing, and that doesn't count the employees, and it doesn't count some of the frequent flyers. So if there's an attorney that walks through and has to go back to his car to get something and comes out, I don't think they screen him a second time. 40,000 people, a lot of people to come through the courthouse. That was not the case 27 years ago. We only had 2 branches then. When we developed Branch 3, that was out of necessity because each of 2 branches, we were full. I mean, there was no more time to put any other cases on, so we created Branch 3. We were very fortunate that we had a state senator who was Dave Hellbach, who was in a leadership position in the Senate that was able to get that branch for us. I don't think we would have done it without that. But now, because of numbers, each of 3 branches is as crowded as each of 2 were back in 1994. I've seen a dramatic change in the number of civil trials that come before the court, and that has been reduced. It used to be that each branch would try an average of 12 jury trials per year, and probably half of those were civil. So we're looking at, for 3 branches, 36 jury trials a year. Probably half of those were civil. Now, with the mediation processes that have been put in place, not only here in Portage County, but all over the state, the trials are almost non-existent. I mean, they're able to mediate outcomes. I remember when I first started, there was talk about medical malpractice, and it's rampant, and all these false claims are being made. It never happened. We had a mediation system and process in this state since before I was on the bench. And I think in 27 years, I've probably had 2 medical malpractice cases, and both of them settled. So non-existent. But those are some of the changes that I've seen. And of course, the electronic media. We've changed from a system which was, we didn't know what a computer was when I started. We first got computers in 1990. And I remember they sent us for training down to Madison. I was scared to touch the thing. I didn't know what to do. And people in my office were complaining. Well, we don't want this. But that has changed dramatically. We're getting really close to a total electronic system, which I was reluctant to do at first because I like to see the file and the size of the file. Over the last 3 or 4 years, I prefer to look at the screen. I can pull stuff up quicker. I can get a view of the entire picture rather than thumbing through the case file. Those are some of the major changes that I've seen.
Boy, that's a little bit of encouragement for all the listeners out there, because so many folks are, still getting themselves acquainted with and comfortable with computers. So talk about that, the 3 courtroom progression. Okay, so you went from 2, you got so full, you went to 3. Yeah. I understand that 4th courtroom is just about upon us, or already is about? How does it?
However, the legislature is not in any mood to grant any judgeships. But what they did several years back, they went to a weighted caseload system to try and figure out how busy everybody is. And so in September, each judge will have to go through a training session, and they're going to report their activities for a week or something like that. And from that information will be pooled, and they'll be able to determine the judicial need for each county. Now, one of the things that that's going to change, and I discussed this with the district court administrator, is the way we've been doing this. The court commissioner is full-time, as you're aware. Mm-hmm. However, the rule is you should only report the time that he's actually in court. So instead of having 3 judges plus a full-time court commissioner, it will show 3 full-time judges plus whatever percentage of time the court commissioner spends in the courtroom. So that will provide a more realistic caseload weight. So after that is completed, the statistics should show the need for a 4th branch. As you know, we have no room for that. There's no place to put a 4th branch. When we got branch 3, we convinced the county board to change the county boardroom and city council chambers to make it a branch 3 courtroom, and they agreed. We did that before we got the judge. We built the ballpark before we got the team. Just like the Braves did back in '53. They built County Stadium, didn't have a team yet. So,
well, as long as we're talking a little bit of history here, let's go back to when you became a judge for the first time and what really led you in this direction.
I didn't plan on doing it. What happened is Judge Jenkins retired in December of 1987. He had spent 19 years on the bench, and I thought, my gosh, that's an awful long time. How could anybody be there? And when that happens, the governor makes an appointment, and they form a committee, and they take applications. So I had no intention of applying. And the attorneys started calling me and coming to my office and saying, you really ought to put your name in. I remember one attorney in particular said, come on, I want to have you over to the hot fish shop to have a drink and dinner after work today. I said, yeah, well, I got time. So I went over. He's trying to convince me. I said, I don't want to do it. You know, it'd be fun, but I just don't want to do it. Well, they pushed and pushed, and as I've often said, I drew the short straw. What happened was we had a district attorney at the time who was a friend, John Rundy, and he said, if you don't put your name in, I'm going to put my name in. I said, John, you know, they're pushing me to do it, but I just don't know. And he says, well, I'm not going to put mine in if you put yours in because I know you'll get it and I won't. And I said, all right, I'll tell you if I'm going to do it or not. We got down to the deadline, and the deadline was a Friday at 5, and you had to fax it in or something. And I couldn't decide, and he couldn't decide. It turns out we both submitted our names. So we both went for the interviews, and I ended up with the appointment. I had different experiences that John had. John's a very good lawyer, but I had just had different experiences, and that's what, plus the support of the bar association, local bar association. So that's how I got there, and I mean, it was a decision-making time with myself and my family, and what to do. I still had my oldest. I don't think was even in high school yet. So I had 3 college educations to worry about, and so we talked about all these things, determining whether or not this is something that we ought to do. So we, when it came time for the appointment, I accepted it. But what was interesting, Judge Jenkins retired the end of December. I got the appointment sometime in early February, and the chief judge of the district called me and said, don't let anyone tell you when to start. You finish up your law practice. I don't care when you start. So I actually didn't start until April. So I waited 2 months to close out my practice. So that's how I got to be 27 plus years. Wow. Would have been 27 in April.
So what are the most difficult cases that come to mind?
Family cases, child custody cases. It's well known among the lawyers that I don't like those kind of cases. They're just not something that I get any training in. In law school, you're not told how to determine child custody cases. Mm-hmm. There are statutory provisions that you have to follow, mm-hmm. but the reality is each family is different. Mm-hmm. What happens during those battles is each one tells bad things about the other one, trying to make the other one look bad, and it's just horrible. And of course, you get they'll call the teachers in, and the teachers will say, well, he doesn't come to the teachers' meeting. Does that make him a bad father? You know, and they're trying to find all these points. What I always do, and it's been successful most of the time, is tell them, look, I have the 2 parents in court with their attorneys, and I said, look, why don't you decide this yourself? I'm the least qualified to do this. You are more qualified than I am. And why would you want to go home and tell your kids that some guy down the courthouse in a black robe told them what their lives are going to be like? Wouldn't it be better if you went home and said, your mom and I, or your dad and I, we went down to courthouse and we met with everybody, and your mom and I, or your dad and I, we decided that this is what your future is going to be. I said, that works a lot better. And we were very successful with getting people to do it. There were always, however, 1 or 2 a year where that didn't work. And then you have to try them, and they're horrible.
Just that story alone just helps to illuminate for all of us why it is that we've just appreciated you. Let's just say that, because that's pretty incredible. Well, listen, so we have a couple minutes left in the show, and I just think folks need to know how they will continue to connect with you, what you're going to be working on and doing. You've got a radio show, you teach your class.
Well, it's part of the radio. What I do is I bring in the people who are going to give the lecture for the community lecture series for the College of Letters and Science. There are 8 lectures per year during a school year, and I've just done that because I enjoy doing it. And I go over to, I just contact Scott Krieger, say, how about this day, and we do it, and I just bring the guest in and interview the guest, and I've learned more stuff. I learned what nanotechnology means. I can't tell you what it means now, but I figured
it's already changed twice over again since you...
So I hope, I probably will continue doing that. Whether I'll continue teaching, of course, is up to the university. You understand what the budget problems they're going through.
And you'll get to guest judge, is that what I should call it?
Yeah, we have, the law provides for reserve judges when you retire or when you leave the bench, whatever it is, without retiring, you can become a reserve judge, which means that you go help out. And if a judge gets sick somewhere, they can call you and come in. The reason I say when you leave the bench, there's a judge up in the northern part of the state who has been off the bench probably for close to 30 years. He only did 1 term, and he's probably my age, and he's been coming around on his motorcycle, reserve judging every once in a while. He drives a Harley, you know. So,
so you're looking forward to all
I
those
will
things,
do that. There's a waiting period by state law, but I will do that. I'll remain active in the community. We plan on staying here.
Wonderful.
But we might go to some place warm for a few weeks or a little bit in the winter. But other than that, we'll be around. Well,
I know that, again, as senior judge, right? We always think about who's our senior judge and who's our connection. When we look at any physical facility changes, it's always through the senior judge connecting with those higher-ups, if you would, at the state level. It's just such an important role that you've played in so many different ways, and just a stellar leader, an inspirational leader, and I just so thank you for all of that on behalf of our citizenry.
But that's I enjoy doing that. I enjoyed working with the committees on trying to discuss the need for a courthouse and a jail facility, trying to educate the people on how courthouses should be built. So I learned a lot during that process as well.
Well, we wish you well. And we will expect to see you around and expect you to be as engaged as you ever have been in our community, and tell us how we can be part of your world in doing that.
Okay,
and,
thank you.
Yeah,
I'll be here.
Thank you so much for being my guest.
All right, thank you for having me.
So next month on Portage County Matters, I'm hoping to have someone who will be here to talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act and our 25 years of coming a long way for people with disabilities, not just here in Portage County, but for across our country. So hope that you'll be interested in joining us. Thanks.